never imagined that a single picture could completely upend my life, but last Tuesday it did. Our corporate director, Mr. Peterson, was standing next me, and we were both grinning as he shook my hand. I finally got that promotion, the caption said. Hard labor is rewarded. Career turning point. It was simply another professional update on social media, and I didn't give publishing it any thought. How foolish I was. My name is Audrey, and I progressed from entry-level manager to department head at Marshall & Associates at the age of 25, ultimately landing my first major break. 3 years of overtime, innumerable presentations, and more coffee than I would like to confess made the journey difficult, but I accomplished it alone, and that meant the world to me. My phone buzzed while I was still enjoying the high from my promotion. I immediately recognized the number, my mother, even though it wasn't stored in my contacts. After 7 years of no communication, she suddenly called me. As I gazed at the screen, my fingers shook. My voice sounded smaller than I had intended when I said, "Hello." My mother's voice sounded just as I remembered it. The sickly sweet tone she used to demand anything. "Audrey, sweetheart. Your message was just viewed by your father and myself. We're quite pleased with you. Are you proud?" It was a smack of a word. When I most needed that pride, where was it? I managed to say, "Thanks," while holding onto my desk for support. We ought to rejoice. How about spending this weekend with us? We can talk about hosting a suitable celebration for you. The entire family would be thrilled to see how prosperous you have gotten. The entire family, Sarah included. I pondered. My younger sister, Sarah, was the favorite, the golden kid, and the person who could never do anything wrong. "I'll give it some thought," I murmured, my throat constricted. "Please, sweetheart, do. You have been much missed. Don't you believe it's time to move on from the past?" I sat at my desk and stared at nothing after we hung up. After 7 years of stillness, a social media post shattered it. I left that house 7 years ago with the promise that I would never go back. Creating a life without them for 7 years. My palm touched my wrist's medical alert bracelet, which alerted me to my peanut allergy. The same ailment that Sarah had used as fodder for her nasty comments, and that my parents had dismissed as a bother. My grandmother's comments stuck in my head. Family is not only about biological ties. It's about who treats you like family. She had been my true parent for the previous 7 years, helping me get through college and having faith in me when others had lost faith. I couldn't get the phrase, "We're proud of you," out of my brain. It's funny how such statements may seem so sincere from one person and so empty from another. I glanced at the picture of Grandma and I during my college graduation that was on my desk. That day, she was beaming with genuine pride rather than the fake pride my parents were now displaying. Old scars had been torn open by Mom's phone call, and now the past was flooding back. Despite being 3 years younger than me, Sarah immediately became the focal point of our family's world. Sarah wore fancy clothes, but I bought more functional items from bargain places. While my academic accomplishments accumulated dust in drawers, my parents would use pricey cameras to record her every step. I can very clearly recall my 10th birthday. I had been expecting for the art set I had been eyeing for months. It was a simple kit that included a sketchbook and colored pencils. Since number 2 pencils are what you need for school anyhow, I chose to get a pack of these instead. Our parents turned the whole backyard into a Disney princess paradise, complete with a hired Cinderella, for Sarah's 7th birthday that same year. When family members questioned the difference, Mom would respond, "Sarah is just more artistic. She needs the right resources to hone her skills." During a family meal, my Aunt Jessica once told my dad, "You have to understand. All children deserve the same amount of love. This is incorrect. Mom's dismissive wave is still visible to me. Oh, Jessica, you're childless. You're not understanding. Simply said, our females are different. Sarah has a lot of promise. The ongoing emotional undermining was worse than the actual material possessions, such as when I took first place in a math competition held by the state. Mom remarked, "That's nice, dear, but did you see Sarah's painting got displayed in the school hallway?" In place of congratulating her. My grandma saw right through it. She would say to my mother, "Margaret, this isn't right." One child is being raised to feel entitled, while the other is being raised to feel unworthy. My mother would roll her eyes and say, "Mom, please. Sarah has a talent. Audrey is just a regular person. We're simply being realistic about what they can do." Sarah rapidly figured out how to take advantage of her position. Knowing that our parents would accept her without inquiry, she would break something and put the blame on me. She would make me appear awful by unintentionally spilling juice on my papers, and then crying when I became angry. She even once told her friends that I was the dull sister and that they couldn't play with me. Sarah played a little part in a school play on the day I was admitted into the advanced mathematics program. Can you guess which event my folks were at? While other parents were beaming with delight at their kids, I sat by myself in the arithmetic classroom for the awards presentation. My parents never even saw my certificate, which was signed by the principal and my instructor. "Your sister needs us more," Dad would say whenever I tried to express my feelings. "She has real talents to nurture. You're more independent." Independent wasn't a compliment. It was their way of justifying their negligence. Even our relatives could see it. During family gatherings, conversations would halt when Sarah would dramatically demand attention or deliberately exclude me from activities. The adults would exchange uncomfortable glances, but my parents remained oblivious, or perhaps willfully blind. Life has a way of throwing curveballs when you least expect them. Mine came in the form of a peanut butter sandwich at Grandma's house when I was 12. I'd eaten peanut butter countless times before. It was actually one of my favorite foods, but that day was different. "Want a sandwich, sweetheart?" Grandma had asked, making her famous peanut butter and honey combination. I nodded eagerly, watching her spread the creamy peanut butter across the bread. 3 bites in, something felt wrong. My throat started to tighten, and breathing became increasingly difficult. I remember dropping the sandwich, my hands clutching at my throat. What happened next is still a blur in my memory. Grandma's quick thinking saved my life. She immediately recognized the signs of anaphylaxis and called 911. I remember her holding my hand in the ambulance, her voice steady but scared. "Stay with me, sweetheart. Just keep breathing." My parents arrived at the hospital about an hour later, clearly annoyed at having to leave work. Mom was tapping her foot impatiently while the doctor explained about severe peanut allergies and how they can develop suddenly, even if you've never had problems before. "She'll need to carry an EpiPen at all times," the doctor emphasized. "And you'll need to be very careful about checking ingredients in everything she eats. Cross-contamination can be dangerous too." Dad nodded absently, checking his watch. Mom was already on her phone, probably texting Sarah's dance instructor about being late for pickup. The ride home was worse than the hospital. They waited until we were in the car before letting their true feelings show. "This is just perfect," Mom muttered. "As if we don't have enough to deal with. First the math tutoring, now this. Everything with you has to be complicated, doesn't it, Audrey?" Dad added. I pressed myself against the car door, trying to make myself as small as possible. My throat was still sore from the reaction, but their words hurt more than any physical pain. The years that followed were a careful dance of reading labels and carrying EpiPens. Grandma made sure I had proper medical alert bracelets and helped me learn how to advocate for myself. She even called the school to make sure they understood the severity of my condition. Sarah, of course, found endless amusement in my new medical condition. She'd wave peanut butter sandwiches in my face, laughing when I flinched away. "Oh, sorry," she'd say with fake innocence. "I forgot you're allergic to everything now." At family gatherings, she'd loudly announce, "Be careful, everyone. Audrey might die if she eats the wrong thing," making me feel like even more of an outsider. My parents never corrected her behavior. If anything, they seemed annoyed by my need for care. I learned to pack my own meals, check every label 3 times, and never trust food I hadn't personally verified. It was exhausting, but it became my normal. My high school graduation should have been a moment of triumph, full scholarship to Northwestern State University. I'd done it entirely on my own, maintaining straight A's while juggling part-time jobs and my constant vigilance about food allergies. The acceptance letter felt like validation for all those nights I spent studying while Sarah's music blasted through the walls from her bedroom. The family dinner where I announced my college acceptance is forever etched in my memory. "I got into Northwestern," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Full academic scholarship." "That's nice, dear," Mom said, barely looking up from her plate. "The thing is," I continued, gripping my fork tightly, "I'll need help with housing. The scholarship covers tuition, but not accommodation. I've looked into the costs." No, Dad's response was immediate and flat. "You chose to apply to a college in another state. That was your decision. We're saving for Sarah's education. She's planning to attend Juilliard in 2 years, and that's not cheap." I stared at my plate, fighting back tears. Sarah smirked from across the table, twirling her pasta with deliberate slowness. "But it's just the housing cost." I tried again. "The scholarship covers everything else." "That's nice, dear." Mom's voice was sharp. "We've made our decision. If you want to go to college out of state, you'll have to figure out the housing situation yourself." That's when the front door opened and Grandma walked in, holding a congratulations balloon and a small gift bag. Her smile faded as she took in the scene. My red eyes, Sarah's smug expression, our parents' cold faces. "What's going on?" she asked, looking around the table. Sarah giggled, always eager to twist the knife. "Oh, Audrey got into college, but she'll be living on the street because Mom and Dad won't pay for her housing. They're saving their money for my Juilliard education instead." The silence that followed was deafening. "Is this true?" Grandma's voice was quiet but sharp. When no one answered, she continued, "Margaret, Richard, how dare you? Your daughter earned a full scholarship, and you won't even help her with housing." "Mom, please," my mother sighed, "Sarah's education." Grandma's voice rose. "What about Audrey's education? What about supporting both your children?" She turned to Sarah, who was still wearing that satisfied smirk. "You're becoming a cruel, spoiled child. I'm ashamed of how you're behaving." Sarah's face crumpled, and she burst into tears, her usual tactic when things didn't go her way. Mom and Dad immediately rushed to comfort her, shooting angry glares at Grandma and me. "This is exactly what we mean." Mom snapped. "Audrey and you. Mom, you're always causing problems, always making everything difficult." Something inside me snapped without a word. I stood up and walked out of the dining room. I climbed the stairs to my bedroom, pulled out my old duffel bag, and started throwing in clothes. Grandma appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. "Pack everything you need, sweetheart. You're coming home with me." "But college," I started. "We'll be taken care of," she said firmly. "I'll pay for your housing. You focus on your studies and building your future." 20 minutes later, we walked out of that house together, leaving behind my parents' angry voices and Sarah's theatrical sobs. In that moment, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. College life was everything I'd hoped for and more. My tiny apartment near campus became my sanctuary, a place where I could finally breathe freely without walking on eggshells. Grandma visited often. She never missed a birthday, a holiday, or any milestone in my life. My parents and Sarah, on the other hand, became ghosts. No calls on Christmas. No cards on my birthday. Not even a text message during graduation. 7 years of complete silence. So when I found myself standing on their doorstep after that phone call about my promotion, it felt surreal. The house hadn't changed. Same cream-colored walls, same manicured lawn, same brass knocker that I used to have to stretch to reach. Mom opened the door with an enthusiastic Audrey that seemed rehearsed. She pulled me into a hug that felt foreign and stiff. The living room was exactly as I remembered it, still dominated by Sarah's achievements. Her Juilliard degree held the place of honor above the fireplace. She sat in Dad's old armchair, scrolling through her phone, barely acknowledging my presence except to roll her eyes when Mom gushed about my promotion. "We're so proud of you, sweetheart," Mom kept saying, the words sounding hollow after 7 years of silence. "Aren't we, Richard?" Dad nodded from his spot on the couch. "Very proud. Making your way up in a big company like that. We should celebrate properly." Mom continued, her voice taking on that familiar planning tone I remembered from all of Sarah's parties. "A big family gathering right here at home. Everyone would love to see you. Aunt Jessica, all your cousins, Grandma too." I asked pointedly, "Grandmother too?" Of course," Mom said quickly, though I caught her slight grimace. "We want to make things right, Audrey. It's been too long. Let's say 2 weeks from now. Give everyone time to make arrangements." I found myself nodding, though every instinct screamed this was wrong. "Sure, that sounds nice." The 2 weeks leading up to the party were strange. Work kept me busy with my new responsibilities, but my phone buzzed constantly with messages from my suddenly attentive family. Mom sent daily texts about party preparations. Sarah, who hadn't acknowledged my existence for 7 years, suddenly sent me a friend request on social media with a message that read, "Time to put the past behind us. Sis." Grandma was ecstatic about the reconciliation. "This is all I've ever wanted," she told me over our weekly dinner, "for my family to be whole again." The day of the party arrived, warm and sunny. I pulled up to my parents' house to find cars already lining the street. Inside, the house buzzed with activity. Aunt Jessica's daughter, Emma, darted around with her phone, recording everything like a tiny documentary filmmaker. The smell of catering filled the air. All I noticed was surprise. Grandma enveloped me in a warm hug. "You look beautiful, sweetheart." Aunt Jessica hugged me next. "So proud of you, kiddo. Department head at your age. That's incredible." Sarah stood by the stairs in a designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent, greeting guests with her practiced pageant smile. Our parents fluttered around, playing the perfect hosts as if the last 7 years had never happened. When everyone was seated at the elaborately decorated dining table, Mom clinked her glass for attention. "We're so happy to have everyone here today," she began, smiling broadly. "As you know, we're celebrating Audrey's promotion." She paused for polite applause. "It's wonderful to see her finally finding her footing in the corporate world." I should have known the word "finally" was a warning sign. "And speaking of success," Mom continued, her voice brightening, "I'd like to take a moment to talk about our Sarah." Many of you know she graduated from Juilliard with honors last year. She's such a talented artist, truly gifted. The next 5 minutes were a detailed recap of Sarah's achievements, ending with, "And now that Audrey has this wonderful position in the air of management, we're hoping she'll help her incredibly qualified sister join this prestigious company." The table fell silent. I could feel Grandma's eyes on me. I could see Aunt Jessica's uncomfortable shift in her chair. Emma kept her phone trained on the scene, capturing every excruciating moment. "Actually," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, "I'm not in a position to hire anyone. I'm a department head, not a director. I don't make hiring decisions." Mom's smile tightened. "But surely, with your new influence—" "Excuse me," I cut her off, standing up. "Mom, Dad, can we talk privately?" They followed me into the kitchen, their practice smiles dropping as soon as we were alone. "I thought this was supposed to be a celebration of my promotion," I said quietly, "not a networking event for Sarah." "Don't be selfish, Audrey," Mom snapped. "Sarah needs this opportunity. Family helps family." "Selfish?" I repeated in disbelief. "After 7 years of no contact, you reach out only because you want something from me, and I'm the selfish one." Dad's face hardened. "We've given Sarah every advantage, invested everything in her future. The least you could do is help your sister now that you're in a position to do so." We returned to the dining room, the tension following us like a storm cloud. I sat down, trying to ignore the concerned glances from Grandma and Aunt Jessica. The catering staff had served the main course while we were gone, some kind of elegant chicken dish with a creamy sauce. I took a few bites, my mind still churning from the conversation in the kitchen. The sauce had an interesting flavor, nutty, almost. My throat suddenly felt tight. A familiar panic gripped me as I realized what was happening: peanuts. I managed to grasp my hand already, fumbling from my purse and the EpiPen inside. There were peanuts. The room began to spin. I could hear chairs scraping, voices raising in alarm. Grandma's voice cut through the chaos. "Someone call 911." Everything after that became a blur of sounds and shadows. The last thing I remember was the feeling of my throat closing and Grandma's hands gripping mine. I woke up to the steady beep of hospital monitors. My throat felt raw, my body heavy. Grandma sat beside my bed, her face drawn with worry and exhaustion. "Oh, thank God," she whispered when she saw my eyes open. "We almost lost you, sweetheart." The doctor said it was one of the worst anaphylactic reactions they've seen. I tried to speak, but my throat was too sore. "Don't try to talk yet," Grandma said, squeezing my hand. "You've been out for several hours. The EpiPen and the paramedics barely got to you in time." I managed to rasp out, "How?" "The food." Before Grandma could answer, Aunt Jessica burst into the room with Emma close behind. Emma clutched her phone, her young face uncharacteristically serious. "Audrey," Aunt Jessica's voice shook with anger. "There's something you need to see. Emma, show her." Emma stepped forward, her hands trembling as she held out her phone. "I was recording everything at the party," she said quietly. "I got this when you were in the kitchen with your parents." The video showed the dining room from an angle near the dessert table. I could see myself leaving for the kitchen with my parents. Then, clear as day, Sarah stood up and walked to my place setting. She reached into her designer purse, pulled out a small jar, and quickly stirred something into my food. The smirk on her face was unmistakable. "That's peanut butter," Aunt Jessica said, her voice hard. "Your sister deliberately put peanut butter in your food, knowing full well about your allergy." I stared at the phone screen, watching the scene play out again. Sarah, my own sister, had tried to. She could have killed you. Grandma's voice broke. She knew exactly what she was doing. The four of us sat in stunned silence, watching the damning evidence again and again. The casual way she'd done it, the slight smile on her face as she stirred the peanut butter into my food. It was calculated, deliberate. I left the hospital against medical advice, driven by a mix of rage and disbelief. The video on Emma's phone felt heavy in my pocket. She'd sent it to me before I left. When I pulled up to my parents' house, my hands were shaking on the steering wheel. They were all in the living room, Mom, Dad, and Sarah, acting as if nothing had happened, as if I hadn't nearly died at their dinner table hours earlier. "What are you doing here?" Sarah asked, barely looking up from her phone. "Shouldn't you be in the hospital being dramatic?" "I know what you did," I said, my voice surprisingly calm. "I know you put peanut butter in my food." Sarah's head snapped up, her face a mask of outrage. Mom jumped to her feet. "How dare you accuse your sister?" She spat. "Haven't you caused enough problems?" I pulled out my phone, pulled up the video, and pressed play. The room fell silent, except for the damning evidence playing on the screen. Sarah methodically stirring peanut butter into my food, that self-satisfied smirk on her face. The color drained from Sarah's face. Then, incredibly, she laughed. "Oh, come on, it was just a prank. You're always so serious about everything." "A prank?" My voice shook. I could have died. "Do you understand that? The doctor said I barely made it." "Oh, please," Mom said with a dismissive sweep of her hand. "You're exaggerating." Sarah was only enjoying herself a little. Fun. I gaped at them in shock. Anaphylactic shock struck me. My heart almost stopped. "Listen carefully," Dad said in a chilly tone. "You are no longer our daughter if you even consider calling the police about this. We will totally disinherit you." Everything became quite evident in that instant. I was not related to these folks. They had never been. Without saying another word, I left, got into my car, and headed home. Now my hands were steady. I was fully aware of what I had to accomplish. I posted the video to my social media accounts while seated at my computer. Today I discovered what family really means, and these people are not it. I wrote beside it. Knowing that I had a serious allergy, my own sister purposefully poisoned me with peanuts. It was a joke, according to my parents. I will never again refer to them as family. It was an instantaneous and explosive reaction. I received shocked and indignant comments from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. Aunt Jessica posted the video along with some harsh remarks of her own. Colleagues and friends showed support and horror. In the comments, Sarah and my parents retaliated, accusing me of being an attention seeker and saying it was all a mistake. However, the video was self-explanatory. I went to the police station the following morning and made an official report. The lawyer representing my parents brought a legal document that afternoon. They were taking me out of their will and formally disowning me. Sarah shared a heartbreaking video about how my lies were ruining the family, but I wasn't the only one. That night, Grandma gave me a call. "Decisively, I've spoken to my lawyer," she stated. "I'm utterly cutting them off. Audrey, you are now my sole heir. In any case, you have always been more of my daughter than Margaret's." That evening, I looked through the deluge of texts from friends, coworkers, and even family members. Emma texted me, and my phone buzzed. "You remain my favorite cousin. You are welcome to join us for supper at any moment, according to Mom." I had left a poisonous household 7 years prior. I was rushing toward a genuine one this time. Your intended family may not always be the one you were born into. You have to construct your own sometimes.